Sergey lives with his wife Dasha, and for the past 2 years they have been trying desperately to have a child. They try everything they can think of, changing their surroundings, creating perfect romantic moments, and keeping their married life very active. Sergey even proudly admits that they do it every single night. But none of it works. There are no signs of pregnancy, and that failure slowly turns into frustration and confusion for Sergey. Feeling that something might be wrong, Sergey decides to see a therapist to look for answers. The therapist tells him that his thoughts may soon become reality, and that he needs to be careful. Sergey does not fully understand what that means, but he also does not question it any further. On his way to work, Sergey calls his best friend Zhora, a lawyer who is going through a rough time. Zhora has just lost 8 cases in a row, is struggling financially, has 2 daughters, and desperately wants a son. After the call ends, Sergey continues onto his TV studio, ready to start another day on air with his co-host. At the same time, Dasha is attending an art exhibition featuring her own photography. As usual, Sergey is late. When Dasha calls him, Sergey confidently lies and says he is already in the car and will arrive in 5 minutes. But the moment he steps outside, he realizes his car has been towed for illegal parking. Knowing that Dasha will soon discover the lie when he does not show up, Sergey chooses to skip the exhibition altogether and goes to a bar with Zhora instead. At the bar, Zhora excitedly announces that his wife is 1 month pregnant. He is absolutely convinced that this time the baby will be a boy. His confidence comes from a strange family belief. Zhora explains that during a very important moment, he wore wool socks. In his family, there is a long-standing belief that wearing wool socks during intimacy guarantees the birth of a son. He proudly claims that it worked for his father and his grandfather, and now he is sure it will work for him too. Sergey cannot decide whether this is the most ridiculous thing he has ever heard, or an idea that might actually be worth trying. The next day is Valentine's Day. Sergey and Dasha return to the place where they first met 5 years earlier, a location filled with deep emotional meaning for both of them. While they are there, they make a sincere promise to one day come back with their future children. On the way home, Sergey takes a detour and buys a pair of wool socks. Inspired by Zhora's strange family belief, he decides it is finally time to try it himself. That night, after what he believes is a magical moment, Sergey carefully removes the wool socks and holds them tightly against his chest like a trophy. He is completely convinced that this small act will finally lead them to having a child. Too excited to sleep, Sergey gets up and walks to the window, his heart filled with hope. He quietly prays to be given a baby, his mind overflowing with dreams of becoming a father. Just as he finishes his silent prayer, a shooting star streaks across the night sky. Sergey has no idea what that wish is about to cause. This is Barameni. 10 days later, Sergey is hosting a segment at the studio about a chicken named Sonia. This is no ordinary chicken, but a celebrity. Sonia is famous for predicting the winners of soccer matches by laying eggs, with the number of eggs believed to match the number of goals the winning team will score. While presenting this strange yet fascinating story, Sergey suddenly feels nauseous and rushes off camera to throw up. Embarrassed, he quickly apologizes and returns to continue his work. At that moment, Sergey has no idea that this strange episode is only the beginning of something much bigger. Sometime later, while shopping at a market, something unusual catches Sergey's attention. He stops in front of a shelf filled with pickles. Normally, Sergey hates sour food, but that day he feels an overwhelming urge. When he tells his best friend Zhora about this strange craving, Zhora bursts out laughing and jokes that it sounds exactly like pregnancy cravings. At first, Sergey laughs along. Then his thoughts drift back to the night of the shooting star, and a crazy theory begins to form in his mind. That evening, Sergey quietly opens the closet and takes one of Dasha's pregnancy test kits. Determined to prove his unbelievable theory, he takes the test. When he first sees 2 lines, he feels relieved, thinking it means he is not pregnant. But after reading the instructions, his expression changes completely. 2 lines actually mean a positive result. In disbelief, Sergey repeats the test again and again, but every time the result is the same. The idea that he might be pregnant feels so absurd that he eventually bursts into laughter, staring at the test as if it is playing a cruel joke on him. The next morning, Sergey sits at the table, calmly eating an entire jar of pickles by himself. Dasha notices his strange behavior and starts to wonder what is going on. Gathering all the courage he has, Sergey finally reveals that he is going to be a father. Dasha freezes in place. At first, she assumes Sergey must have cheated and gotten another woman pregnant. But when Sergei explains that he is the one who is pregnant, Dasha's anger instantly explodes. She becomes convinced that her husband is either making an extremely cruel joke or has completely lost his mind. Sergei only wants Dasha to feel happy about this impossible situation, but he quickly realizes that his wife needs time to accept the idea that her husband will be both a father and a mother. That evening, Sergei's parents and Zora's family come over for dinner. Believing this is the right moment, Sergei decides to tell the truth. With complete confidence, he announces that he is pregnant. The room falls into silence. Everyone exchanges confused looks, unsure if they heard correctly. Sergei's parents try to stay calm and gently explain that such a thing is impossible. In their view, there is simply no way for a man to be pregnant. Exhausted by the constant disbelief, Sergei becomes frustrated and storms out of the room, leaving everyone in shock. After he leaves, the atmosphere turns into a round of blame. Sergei's father points the finger at his own wife, recalling all the yoga sessions she did during her pregnancy years ago. He blames those habits, convinced they somehow disrupted their son's body and led Sergei to believe he is a woman. The next morning, Sergei picks up a pregnancy book and starts comparing the symptoms to what he is experiencing. Instead of dwelling on how impossible the situation seems, he chooses to focus on preparing for the baby. After calculating the due date, Sergei concludes that the baby will be born in October. Determined to do everything right, he decides to quit smoking and begins eating large amounts of pickles. As time passes, Dasha slowly begins to accept her husband's strange pregnancy. She starts taking care of Sergei as if he truly is the one carrying the baby. By the 4th month, Sergei's belly is clearly growing. To prepare himself, Sergei starts attending pregnancy classes, pretending he is only there as a supportive husband, accompanying Dasha. Strangely, almost no one questions his presence. Most people assume he is simply a very caring husband who wants to share the pregnancy experience with his wife. Although his family knows the truth, Sergei chooses to keep the pregnancy hidden from the outside world. He knows there is no way to explain it without being seen as insane. In the 5th month, Sergei finally visits an obstetrician with Dasha for the first time. The moment the doctors realize that the husband is the one who is pregnant, they refuse to perform any examination. Desperate, Sergei and Dasha go from doctor to doctor, but they are rejected everywhere. Eventually, they meet Dr. Tanov, a struggling physician who opened his clinic just 2 months earlier and has not had a single patient. Eager for any chance to begin his practice, Dr. Tanov enthusiastically agrees to take on Sergei's case. The doctor asks Sergei to lie down on the examination bed, but Sergei is completely confused, unsure how someone in his situation is even supposed to lie down. The next day at work, Sergei discovers that Zora has sold the story of his pregnancy to a news station for money. Within hours, Sergei's strange situation turns into a global sensation. As the news spreads, people everywhere become fascinated by the idea of a pregnant man, and Sergei becomes famous overnight. The story moves fast. On the streets, on buses, and in public places, people begin recognizing him as the pregnant man. This sudden fame only makes Sergei feel worse. He wanted to keep everything private, but now his personal life is completely exposed. Angry and betrayed, Sergei confronts Zora, but his best friend does not seem to care at all. Zora is already thinking ahead, calling this only the beginning and believing there are many more ideas that could make them both rich. At first, Sergei is furious and insists that he does not want to sell his pregnancy story or profit from his unborn child. But once his anger fades, he slowly starts to see that money itself is not entirely evil. From that moment on, Sergei begins appearing on various TV shows and programs, fully stepping into his role as the pregnant man. He even starts starring in advertisements for pregnancy-related products. His popularity skyrockets in just a few weeks. Wherever Sergei goes, cameras and media crews follow closely behind. It is not just Sergei who gets attention. His entire family is suddenly being interviewed as well. One day, while Sergei is at a restaurant, a gay couple approaches him out of curiosity, wanting to know how a man can become pregnant. Sergei has no real explanation, but he still offers his advice seriously, suggesting they wear wool socks during important moments. At a later doctor visit, Sergei is finally told that he is expecting a baby boy. He smiles quietly to himself, convinced that this must be the result of the magical wool socks. As Sergei leaves the doctor's office, reporters swarm him once again. He is so busy answering questions that he does not even notice Dasha falling behind. Since becoming famous, Sergei has stopped showing his wife the attention and affection he once did. Things grow worse when Sergei gets his own television show, where he gives advice to women on how to be better mothers. Zhora makes a lot of money from the show as well. But the more work Sergei takes on, the more distant he becomes from Dasha. In one episode of the show, Sergei invites his entire family to a restaurant to talk about the pregnancy. Dasha, already overwhelmed and angry, lashes out at the camera crew and walks away. Soon after, the rest of the family leaves too, abandoning Sergei at the table. For the first time, Sergei truly feels alone and begins to realize that his newfound fame has caused him to lose control of his life. Just as Sergei starts thinking about fixing everything, new problems arise. A group of religious protesters begins demonstrating against him, condemning his pregnancy as unnatural. As public hostility grows, a rival television network files a lawsuit against Sergei. They accuse him of faking the pregnancy and deceiving the public for profit. At the first court hearing, Zhora barely gets a chance to speak. The opposing lawyer presents strong arguments that quickly shape the mood of the courtroom. She even reveals details of Sergei's bank accounts, showing the huge profits he made after his pregnancy became public. Meanwhile, at home, Dasha urges Sergei to put an end to all of this and return to a normal life. But overwhelmed by stress and anger, Sergei ends up taking his frustration out on his wife. At the second hearing, Zhora brings Sergei to court and proudly shows everyone his visibly swollen belly. He even submits ultrasound results as proof of the pregnancy. However, the opposing lawyer immediately fights back and calls Sergei's obstetrician to testify. She argues that since Sergei was the doctor's very first patient, his experience with such an extraordinary case is extremely limited. Things take a darker turn when she presents another medical study, where experienced doctors state clearly that it is biologically impossible for a man to be pregnant. As the trial moves closer to its conclusion, the situation looks increasingly grim for Sergei. After spending an entire day giving interviews, he returns home only to discover that Dasha has left him. It is at this moment that Sergei finally understands how badly he has treated his wife. He realizes that the only way to earn back Dasha's trust is to let go of everything: the fame, the television shows, and the bizarre journey that changed his life, and return to the simple life they once had. At the next court session, Sergei does not appear. Zhora looks nervous, but in the middle of the chaos, he delivers an emotional speech about the greatness of a mother. The courtroom fills with applause. Just when it seems like sympathy is starting to shift in their favor, something unexpected happens. The judge receives a video that Sergei had previously sent to Zhora, and without hesitation, Zhora asks for it to be played. As the video begins, the room falls completely silent. In the recording, Sergei admits that his pregnancy was a lie. He also apologizes to everyone who believed him, especially Dasha, who stood by him throughout everything. After hearing the confession, the judge immediately declares Sergei guilty and orders him to pay a fine of 10 million rubles. Those who once supported Sergei now feel deeply disappointed and betrayed by the man they trusted. Later, Sergei meets Dasha at their favorite place and sincerely apologizes for being a terrible husband. Dasha forgives him, but at that very moment, Sergei realizes that the time for the baby's delivery may have arrived. In a rush, he is taken to the hospital. The doctors move quickly and perform a cesarean operation. The moment is filled with tension, but the delivery goes smoothly. Sergei apologizes to his entire family for his behavior over the past few months and admits that he has chosen love over fame. Not long after, Dasha arrives carrying their baby and places the child in Sergei's arms for the first time. In that precious moment, Sergei is overwhelmed with happiness and gratitude. He understands that his journey, no matter how strange or unbelievable it was, has led him to a new beginning, a family, love, and a chance to become a better man. 3 years later, Dasha showcases a photography exhibition featuring the images she captured during Sergei's pregnancy. Their son has grown up and now plays happily alongside Zhora's 2 daughters. Life seems calm, warm, and finally balanced again. A few months after the exhibition, Dasha stands by the same window once more, quietly praying for twins. This time, 2 shooting stars cross the night sky, and her wish is granted. The story ends by revealing an unexpected final twist, with both Dasha and Sergei shown to be pregnant, closing the film on a surreal yet hopeful note. So the moral of the story is never trust wool socks, shooting stars, or your best friend with a news station, because you might end up pregnant, famous, sued, and still craving pickles.